Welcome to the Titan Perspective 313. I am Lauren Beasley and this is Carrick Jones. Here talking about this tough loss the Titans just took to Bowling Green. 64-63 was the final score. Tough loss for the Titans after being on a 3-game winning streak. Not to mention Bowling Green has always been a team that they struggled with, the last three years? Last 3 years. So this is obviously would have been a big win to continue their 4-game winning streak. Not only that, they would have continued their undefeated stat at home so far this season. It's just a tough loss overall, but more than anything, it's the way that they lost, which is to a buzzer beater. 64-63 again was the final score. A lot of controversy already has started about the final shot. Did he get it off in time? Should he have had 2.2 seconds to begin with? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it really should have been between 1.5 and 1.7 seconds, and there's people that have gotten contact with me and people on the team that don't even think he had that much time. Mm-hmm. Some people don't think Matt went out of bounds on the other side when he intercepted the ball. So not a good loss to have, and especially when they told Coach McCallum the clock didn't work. That's why they didn't go and review the time. But it did work when they went to review the final shot. So not very accountable by the officiating team.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, for me, I have my issues with Detroit. We're going to get to those in a minute. But at the same time, I'm with you. It's a lot of controversy surrounding this win for Bowling Green. They played a great game. Hey, I have no issue with that. But at the same time, when you look back at this game, there were 2.2 seconds left after Juwan Howard had just made a great shot from, mid-range right at the free throw line. Had a great shot. Titans had the lead. There are 2.4 seconds left. They throw it inbounds. We're talking about Bowling Green here. It gets, if you will, intercepted, picked off, whatever word you want to use by Matt Grant of the Titans. And the next thing we're saying, okay, game's over, don't worry about it, we won. They say, no, well, there's time on the clock. Myself and Carrick are thinking 1.3, 1.4, 1.8. There's no way there should be 2 seconds or more on this clock. And all of a sudden it was 2.2 after it only being 2.4.
Yep. It makes no sense, and no accountability there from this officiating crew that had their issues all day long. They were threatening to give players technicals for virtually no reason. For both teams, not a complete game done by this crew. Hope we don't have it again this year.
Couldn't agree more. But at the same time, and I said this before, as tough as the loss this is, and as much as I don't necessarily agree with the officiating towards the end of the game or in general, there were plenty of times where the Titans could have won this game, and a lot of it just comes down to a lack of execution offensively, and even defensively, I wasn't impressed as I normally am. What about you?
No, they had about 7 chances to win the game in the last 4 minutes where they got a stop, they didn't convert it to points. And you can't do that. Good teams are going to get the stops and turn them into points. And, they did score 19 points off turnovers, but that should have been somewhere around 28, 29, 30 points off turnovers, and they didn't do that today, and that's why they lost. I mean, you can't let the officiating be the reason they lost the game. There was 3 times in this game where they could have taken a lead, and then there was 4 or 5 other times when they're down by 10, down by 7 or 8, and they continuously let Bowling Green come back in. One player for Bowling Green scored a majority of the points. I mean, you got one guy for them with 26. I mean, nobody else had more than 9 after that. You can't let that happen. And I guess it's going to get the growing pains out of the way, but at the same time, you went from probably having 4 or 5 losses in non-conference to probably immediately 5, possibly 6 or 7 now. So with a loss here.
Agreed. And the offensive struggles, I'm not really surprised at. We've talked about this multiple times since the season began, but defensively is where I was more so irritated. And it wasn't necessarily in the sense of, like you said, they had 9 steals, they got 19 points off turnovers, but when you go back and you look at the second chance points, which I consider to be part of your defense, you allow Bowling Green to have 17 second chance points. You allowed them to score 28 points in the paint. I have yet to see that all season, and then that's against better teams who have better post players. I mean, nothing against Richaun Holmes, who was great today with 26 points, 18 rebounds. He was phenomenal, and obviously the Mac should be very afraid of him this season. But when I look at this team, I'm thinking back defensively, you look sloppy. It was penetration all day, whether you were guard, whether you were wing, whether you were center. Then on top of that, no rebounding. Then you add the reaching, and then just the clumsy fouls that constantly put this team at the line. I mean, it was a lot of unnecessary stuff. And I know Coach McCallum said in the press conference, I feel like the defense played pretty well. It was just the rebounds. I'm kind of like, no, I don't think it was just the rebounds. This defense did not look as good as they normally do to me in this game against Bowling Green.
No, they didn't. They didn't play defense well. And Juwan's cramps are part of that. I think he had cramps for about the last 12 minutes. But Pat Ackerman's still not doing anything. I mean, one block, 2 rebounds. He's the biggest guy on the team. No points. You look at Brandon Kearney, not a whole lot in the defensive category. He's only got 2 rebounds and 1 block. I mean, those things need to change. You shouldn't have Matt Grant leading you in blocks and steals. That shouldn't happen. And Paris Bass, he had 4 steals, and he had a really good game. But that's about the only guy that we can say had a very good game.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, that's what I was getting ready to say. While there was some bad, there was some good. Obviously, Juwan, as you mentioned, had the cramps, couldn't go full speed, but it was nice to see his shot selection be a little bit better. His execution was a little bit better, but it was also nice to see Anton Wilson and Paris Bass, who have been key this season so far, really get going, especially Anton, who had sat out most of the first half due to foul trouble, kept his head, came in second half, scored plenty of points, ended up finishing with 13 points. He had Paris Bass, who, like you mentioned, scored 17. But I think it's just, offensively, like you said, it's okay to get the kinks out, but it seems to be the same problems, either turnovers, a lack of sharing the ball. And a lot of these things is and a lot of it comes down to bad shots or good shots that they can't execute on. And that's going to continuously be a problem, not just against teams like Bowling Green, but going into the rest of your non-conference play like South Florida, like Wichita State, and then ultimately when you go into conference play, which is going to be huge for them this season.
Yeah, it's do or die time right now. They have the Cupcake of Aquinas tomorrow, but then Saturday they have South Florida, and then the week following they have Wichita State. So there's no time to lift their feet off the pedal. They got to go and go now, and they learned today that they got something to work on.
All right, so Aquinas, we both feel good that they can go in here and win, or are we?
Oh yeah, they'll win by 30. Yeah.
Well, so we're saying that I say 25, you say 30.
30. Yep.
Okay, he says 30, I say 25. We'll see what they do against Aquinas tomorrow. But as you mentioned, it should be a cupcake game. But as we both said, again, as bad as maybe an officiating game as this was, Titans could have easily won this game in other areas, and it starts on the defensive end and it ends on the offensive end. So for me, like I said, as much as I want to get on the officiating and the clock management and all that stuff, which I will, at the same time, I have to bring it back to just poor execution on both sides of the ball, which continue to hurt this team in certain areas. Sometimes they can come back and win, sometimes they can't, and they're learning not every team is going to allow them to come back and win just because you decide in crunch time I'm ready to play.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. See you guys next time.